Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom, where we bring you engaging conversations and respectful disagreement across the social spectrum.
Injected with the quirks of everyday life.
Grow up as we navigate the complexities of this modern world with all the humor and warmth we can muster.
And the occasional gentle ribbing. We're glad you're here. Happy listening. Okay, so this may sound weird. As y'all know, I'm usually the guy who just says burn it all down whenever we start talking about the world feeling so broken. But today, we've decided to try and take the grown-up approach and actually ask how you would fix it. And because we're us and weird millennials and mom, we didn't call a well-informed policy expert or some fancy think tank. Callie called ChatGPT.
Yes, I did. I literally asked AI, hey, if the United States wanted to help fix the world, what's the plan? And it spit out this very well organized, bullet pointed, borderline presidential strategy document. So in this episode, we're not inventing solutions from scratch. We're going through AI's proposed roadmap and seeing what holds up, what's nonsense, and what's surprisingly smart.
And here's the deal. This is equal parts fascinating and slightly unsettling. Can a chatbot actually outline global fixes? Is that helpful, hopeful, or just proof that we've lost our minds? We're going to walk through the big ideas, push back where we need to, talk about what might actually work in the real world. We're jumping all the way in. Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom.
I'm Callie.
I'm Cole.
And I'm Mom. So this one's kind of a weird one.
Oh, yes.
This one is really interesting, and I hope that it was implied in our intros there, but I think we should take all of this with buckets of salt.
Oh, yeah.
Because and I want to, before we get going and start, we've got I have an early weird thought today, because when we were talking about this episode and Callie was talking about the outline that had been planned, it just kind of struck me. ChatGPT and large language or learning language models have a tendency to tailor their responses to the user, particularly after a certain amount of exposure to that individual user. Callie was using the podcast ChatGPT. I have never really used it before, and so I was just curious if I was to use the exact same prompt on a fresh browser, incognito mode, what kind of response would I get? And it's interesting how different they are. Do they have some of the same like key foundational ideologies or ideas? Yes, but the approaches in what we're covering today are much more tailored from what I can tell. And I thought it was really interesting going through when I got to the end of mine, because the one that I got was, I wouldn't really call it bland, but it wasn't specifically tailored towards any particular ideology. I wouldn't have called it right, left, Republican, Democrat, center, libertarian, any of those really. But at the end, it gives me the option, hey, this is the nonpartisan version, but let me tailor this to any ideology that you want. Gives me a list of several options, and then an option to come up with my own ideology or provide my own ideology. And so I made one that is kind of outside the normal political realm, and it was wildly different and very technology forward, which I thought was interesting. But I think it's really important to take all of this with a big grain of salt.
Well, and again, like, if you've listened to our show at all, we're a little bit all over the place in our diversity of thought, in our ideologies and political leanings, in everyday approaches to how we handle and address things. So when it's pulling from all of the quote unquote history that it has of us and our various episodes, I thought it was really fascinating to see it kind of add emphasis to things that we've brought up or certainly discussed at length. But then kind of tacking on to Cole's weird thought there, if that's what it did for us, what would it do for Donald Trump? Using the same prompt. Hey, how do we fix the world from the perspective of the United States? What would that look like if Bill Gates put it in? What would
With
that
the
look
assumption that
like?
they were regular users and had
Right,
acquainted themselves with their particular chatbot.
right. And so I just think it would be so fascinating to see all of these different people and perspectives. And I'm not sitting here talking about billionaires specifically. I'm talking about people who have very specific outlooks on how the world should function, right? What would it look like if the Pope did it? If the Pope said, "Hey, how do we fix the world to ChatGPT?" I mean, I think that it could be really interesting. If What would it look like if Greta Thunberg does it? Where is it going to place that emphasis and everything?
Yeah.
So I 100% agree, Cole. Take it with a bucket of salt. A grain is not enough. But I thought it would be so fascinating to sit here and walk through some of the ups and downs and individual ideas. And full transparency, these are not our ideas. They may be based loosely off of what it is that we've said and tailored to what it thinks that we want to hear, but we didn't write any of this. We are sharing our thoughts and opinions based on what it has given us. So I'm just going to hop right in.
I would be really interested for you to do this same kind of experiment and say, hey, make a plan for Cole, make a
Hmm.
plan for Callie, and make a plan for mom and see how they come out differently.
Oh, definitely. And again, I think it would be really fascinating to see what it assumes each person values. And the other kind of note before we really hop in here is I think that we also, it's part of the bucket of salt, right? I think that we have to remember that language learning models are not only facts, they're not only accurate, they're not only based on reality. There is a
They
lot
are
of what do you
generative.
Yes, exactly. But there's a lot of assumptions that are made. I mean, I was saying something to mom earlier. I remember after Donald Trump started his second term, it was several months into it, like something going around on the internet. You could ask ChatGPT who the president was, and it was very clearly Donald Trump. Whether you like him or not, that's who the president was at the time. And it was like, the president is Joseph Biden. He has been there since this date, and that date was accurate. But it's like ChatGPT hadn't caught up yet. It wasn't current. And you could kind of push it and be like, no, that's not right. And it's like, nope, that election hasn't taken place yet. I was like, did somebody screw up ChatGPT's calendar by a couple of months? Like, how does it not know that this is reality? So just remember, these are concepts of a plan
Based on some level of intelligence.
based on some level of something. So if you have any interest in going and doing it yourself on your ChatGPT, I would love to hear your responses. But here's the prompt: how do we fix the state of the world from the perspective of the United States? I would like you to give specific plans on what you think the overarching solutions would be. And it broke it down into all kinds of things. It prioritized things, it gave actions, it gave specific agencies that would need to be contacted, metrics to use to gauge everything. So, in a nutshell, it thinks that the United States should treat global problems as national security and economic, moral priorities and tackle them through A, stronger domestic institutions, B, renewed global leadership in climate, health, development, and trade, and C, new rules for technology, weapons, and information, which I think new rules for technology is really interesting coming from ChatGPT because that would be a direct impact, but neither here nor there. And then it says below, I lay out an overarching strategy and then concrete actionable plans. Who does what, the metrics to use to measure, and quick citations for the biggest factual assumptions.
So is it just me who sees that this is like a complete opposite of what the current administration? And do you think that's a bias from our Chat GPT? Or, Cole, did you see that in yours also? And here's my example. I mean, Trump has cut out a lot of climate control type things. He's doing away with a huge swath of that.
and healthcare and trade
Yeah.
and
And
rules for technology.
yeah, my point exactly. So, Cole, did yours go along the same lines? Did you see that same conflict?
No, I didn't. There were some aspects of it, and it's kind of interesting because most of the plans, well, the two plans that I really looked at, again, have very similar kind of core pillars, but their approaches to those pillars are quite different. They have much less emphasis on the climate. They have a pretty significant emphasis on economic and technological factors, and even stronger domestic institutions, or maybe reformed domestic institutions. I don't know if I would say stronger, but more efficient institutions is I think what gets pointed out in the plans that I pulled up. So I certainly think that there is some inherent bias from previous interactions here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did get tickled because I know, and I don't remember which one I read it in, but one of them talked about USAID using that department, and I thought, well, that department's gone now. So there's one of your things with it being behind the times on whatever it has to say.
Oh, yeah.
That department no longer exists. So,
Yeah. In
Callie,
fact,
it's in
I
ours.
almost saw the opposite as I was reading through some of these plans, the ones that were generated for me. I was like, well, this is what this current administration is trying to do. They may not be trying to go about it the exact same way, but their end goal is the same from what I can tell.
Yeah, I would say that I would agree with some of that. Yeah. So I don't know how I mean, how do we hit these? Do we kind of do a comparison between the two?
Yeah, I think we can. So I think again, starting from the top, for two millennials and mom, its number one priority was to rebuild domestic democratic resilience. Why? A credible U.S. at home is necessary to lead abroad. That would look like passing federal election safeguards. It would be combating disinformation. It would be strengthening civic education and reducing polarization. And you would measure all of those things by voter turnout, the incidences of election interference, local news funding levels, and public trust indices.
And Cole, what was your first?
Indices.
Indices. Thank you. I was like, what does that even mean?
Uh, it's a plural of index, but I can tell
Oh.
you specifically this number one rebuild domestic democratic resilience and its plan to do so is directly in relation to the conversations that we have had on this podcast. And
So, what
so
was your first priority on the one that you did?
reduce global conflict and strengthen stability, modernize alliances and partnership, lead in conflict prevention, strategic de-escalation with rival powers.
Are those not the same thing?
Yeah, I would say no. Mine is talking about, again, here at home, we're doing things about automatic voter registration, getting people, making that process much easier and streamlined. We're doing backups to paper ballots.
Okay.
We're doing federal standards for cybersecurity, especially of election infrastructure. I mean, we're funding bipartisan public education campaigns. We're expanding grants for local journalism. We're creating public private rapid response centers with transparency rules. Kohl's is a lot more global.
Okay.
Yeah, so Callie's response, because it has all of the prior context to work off of, is much more specific,
Yes.
where mine has a tendency to be much broader because it doesn't have the same amount of information to build from.
Mine's here at home, yours is global. Mine is more specific, yours is more broad.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I don't mean like physically or localized,
Right, but
but
it kind of
it
is at the
is.
same time. That's why I was laughing.
Yeah, and so but like your solutions are much more specific.
Yes. Yes. What do some of your solutions look like for modernizing those alliances and partnerships for leading in conflict prevention?
Reinforcing reinforcing NATO credibility through shared deterrence. That would be joint cyber units, standardized defense procurement, broaden Indo Pacific partnerships with Japan, South Korea, India, Australia to reduce dependence on US alone military presence, and use this is a new one for me mini lateralism, a tight, task focused coalitions instead of giant multilateral institutions. The thing that I kind of liked about mine is it provided pros and cons to each of these kind of main pillars, where the benefits of this particular approach would be burden sharing and stable deterrence, where the risks would be that it could provoke counter alliances.
So, my take on that is that it's really the idea here is for the United States to partner
Partner
with
a bunch of
other
other places.
alliances, NATO, which has been under contention for some time of whether we should stay with NATO or whether we should leave NATO. So I found that part interesting. And I don't disagree with this. I think, and this may just be my opinion, but I feel like the US jumps in to save everybody and that we shouldn't just be the first ones there, that, sometimes this needs to be more localized.
Yeah, I don't really agree with that sentiment. I think it is marketed that way,
Okay.
but I don't think that's the reality. I don't think we are there to save anyone, personally speaking. I think we are there for our own interests largely.
I can follow you on that. I think that you're right, Cole. I think that it is marketed that way, and because it's marketed that way, it can be weaponized. I think that it is being weaponized. We're
For sure.
sending $500 million worth of condoms to Afghanistan. It's like, okay, hold on. That is to prevent all of these other things, and the statistics are not real, and this is not the same, and this is not what the actual dollar amount comes down to, and that's not it's not condoms, it's family planning, all kinds of tactics and tools and things like this for all of these reasons that when you really kind of boil it down, those reasons benefit us at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like, why do we need to be helping Afghanistan with family planning
at
at
all.
all?
Right. Right.
Which was my point, I thought. Why are we jumping in to do this?
Mm, mm,
Because it
mm,
benefits us.
right.
But it's marketed as us being
Why do we need to be doing
the good
this?
guy, being the
Yeah,
hero.
we're helping them.
Um,
But when
Yeah.
you really
Yeah.
get down to the kind of nuts and bolts of it, we're helping them to help ourselves. We're helping them to keep their population smaller and more controllable by us.
okay. I had not looked at it that way.
We're not doing it out of the goodness of our hearts. But it is marketed that way in order for it to be weaponized in many cases, I think.
And so if you can spread that burden and say, hey, help in your more localized areas, well, those cultures are likely going to be more similar. There's a greater likelihood of those people being able to communicate more freely and offer each other better compassion and say, hey, we're helping out our neighboring country because we want stability, not because they have something to offer us.
Right.
Whereas we, right now, as the global police in name,
Yeah.
are acting more like global carpetbaggers.
I mean, think about here a few months ago, Mom, when everything was going on with Vladimir Putin and Ukraine and Zelensky, and we're gonna step in and help you guys with this deal. But the funding for that deal is that we get all these minerals from
Hmm.
Ukraine. It's not because we're doing it out of the goodness of our hearts. We're doing it because we want something. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, I don't think. But I do think that we need to be honest about it. We need to be direct about it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, honestly, I think it would be a whole lot easier for a lot of people to stomach if we were policy wise more upfront about it.
right.
But I mean, there's been a long running joke internet meme that something happened with oil somewhere. And now there's an eagle stamp with an M16 that says, smells like somewhere needs some freedom. But it's real.
Yeah.
And that's legitimate.
The sad truth. I mean, God forbid we get into the Iran-Contra stuff, like, or the war on drugs with the Reagans and things like this. Like, there's just so much that, well, we're going to do this so that we can have this, and we're going to be the police for everybody, even in our own country. We don't want kids on drugs. No, we're funding other wars, other places. But
Yeah.
we're going to put this good marketing spin on it, guys. So it looks pretty. Tied up with a bow. Mom thinks we're
Okay, Callie,
nuts.
your next step.
My next step says that we need to lead an aggressive climate mobilization, both mitigation and adaptation, because climate shocks are systemic risk to the United States and the rest of the world. We're going to set a near-term steel, cement, transport decarbonization package with tax credits, procurement to electrify fleets, and invest in green industrial hubs. This is all being done by the Department of Energy and the Treasury. We're also going to recommit to international finance for an adaptation, scale U.S. contributions to multilateral climate funds, and create a fast response resilience fund for climate disasters. We're going to use trade tools to accelerate clean supply chains, conditional tariff preferences for low carbon goods, and target R&D partnerships. And then we're going to kind of check on how we're doing all of this by using the metrics of national emissions trajectory versus the 2030, 2050 targets, the number of climate resilient projects financed abroad, and jobs in clean industries. So we're trying to make a big step towards cleaning everything up.
Climate.
The climate, yes.
And Cole, yours?
Climate is in pillar 4 for me, and it is lumped in with a couple of other things.
Okay.
So, pillar 4 for me is environmental and social stability, climate resilience, and clean tech diplomacy. Turn federal climate spending into exportable technologies, carbon capture, small modular reactors, grid storage. Lead global adaptation efforts using public private partnerships for coastal cities, agriculture and water scarcity, immigration as a strategic asset. So create 2 tracks, a high skill express and a workforce stabilization visas track. Work with Latin
Interesting.
American nations on joint migration management centers. Modernize processing to reduce illegal crossings while increasing legal inflow, and civic and information resilience, a national media literacy curriculum, transparency rules for political deepfakes and foreign influence, and grants for local journalism to strengthen community level information ecosystems. So
You're
some of
cleaning up
these,
everything, information and the environment.
yeah, I feel like there's less dramatic flair around climate concerns with this particular
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would
build
agree with
out.
that.
Well, and I
So
love the part about the immigration as a strategic asset. Hey, we know that this is going to happen, so let's do it in a wise, beneficial to everybody way that is clean, that is not confusing, and that is beneficial to multiple parties.
So, Cole, that's one of the spots where I thought, "Oh, this is different from the Trump administration."
yes, very much so. And this first category, I would not say is really super aligned. Again, I think the end goal is similar for some of these pillars. The approach is wildly different.
Yes. Yes.
But we're also looking at a grand scale of things. These are plans that could take literally decades to implement. Whereas when you're talking about the approach from the current administration, you're talking about 4 years.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we may not be able to see the long-term impact of some of the policies that are being enacted right now. And we may not like how those policies are being enacted and enforced, but in the long term, their end result may be similar.
We'll wait and see on that one, I think. Yeah. Okay, Cal, your next one.
So my third priority is, and I keep claiming it as mine. It's not really mine. It is the podcast, but whatever. The third priority on this one is global health and pandemic preparedness. Build a real global insurance policy. Prevention is vastly cheaper and less destructive than future pandemics. We are going to triple core investments in global pathogen surveillance, lab capacity, and workforce in key partner countries. Again, think US aid, the CDC, the WHO, coordination amongst all of those to keep us out of trouble. We're going to create a US backed pandemic preparedness accelerant, a grant or loan facility for rapid upgrades, whether that's cold chain, sequencing, hospital surge capacity in all kinds of various regional hubs. We need to negotiate an international risk sharing mechanism. Both the insurer and the reserve would finance this so that countries can mobilize quickly without political delay.
So this is one that I guess I don't I understand being prepared for another pandemic and doing that, but I guess I don't get why the US leads this.
because we're a technology and economic leader across the world.
Well, and because we tend to be the ones who are setting the standards. So if we start doing something, other nations will follow. So if we start working with the World Health Organization saying, "Hey, let's set up these functional benchmarks," then that is applied to all of these other countries for them to follow suit. So that we can all be on the same kind of page to say, "Hey, this is a priority, this is important." And even though we may or may not share a border, we're still globally connected enough that a threat to one is a threat to all.
This is also one that I don't really see happening cleanly.
I mean, I think that you say that. I struggle with this, but I think that we saw it begin to happen when the pandemic started in March of 2020. Everybody say, "Oh shit, this is really bad and impacts all of us. We'll help you with this. Oh, we have that. We'll help you with that. Oh, let's trade on this and this and this." You don't
I
feel that
mean,
way?
no, I don't think I do. I think there was so much conflict of, is this important? And is this really a pandemic? And how should we
I think it turned into that. I do. I
Oh,
think it turned into that. I mean, but there were even things going on even as recently as this most recent election, the presidential election, of people trying to weaponize the fact that the United States is short on COVID tests and all of these things. And then you've got Donald Trump sending them to Vladimir Putin for his personal use. And
yeah.
while I'm not condoning that behavior, I do think that there was an element of, "Oh, shit, we're all really screwed. What resources can we do to help somebody else out? We have a plethora of these. We'll take that." I mean, think about the ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal. That ship was full of all kinds of things that everybody needed, including really simple things like syringes for vaccinations and immunizations that we then as a whole world had to sit down and say, is this the most effective way? We need to ship physical syringes across the world to go and immunize people against something that we need right now. And so it made a big splash. I mean, everything that was going on at the research facility in Wuhan was very quickly turned into weaponization, but it was also, I mean, I know somebody who was in that lab when that all went down. And he was over there doing research to benefit not only us as the United States, but the world on a global stage. And
Yeah.
so watching how, again, I think that you're right. It did get turned into this chaos machine, but there was also significant moments of people stepping up and going, "You need some help. We'll come help you with this. We'll send this your way. We can't be there for you, but we'll find a way. We'll find a solution." And I think even as simple at like silly stuff of watching how entertainment was made. okay, we're
Mhm.
going to all social distance. We're going to do this. We're going to slim down all of our staff so we don't have to have 65,000 people on set, but we need to get the news made. Or people like, what's his name? John Krasinski, who was like, hey, we need to put out good news because everybody is depressed and this is wildly
Yep.
overwhelming. Let's do good stuff. I mean, thinking about the people in New York City who at 7 o'clock every night, they all came out to clap
Mhm.
for frontline workers. There was a sense of global camaraderie. I think it got squashed, but I do think that it existed.
And Cole, yours didn't even address pandemics or health.
No, this particular section is another one that I feel was was especially tailored based on bias from previous interactions through this ChatGPT account. Because none of the ones that I pulled up even mention pandemic. They do talk about healthcare to a certain degree. This one, not really. But one of the other ones that I was looking through, essentially the strategy is to, okay, focus on developing the best healthcare system that you can in the United States, the most efficient, most effective, cheapest, and then exporting that. Focus on R&D, research and development, build the best technology and resources, and then export those to the rest of the world. Prosperity at home being exported results in prosperity globally. And so
And am I fair to say that I feel like the administration has shut down a lot of that R&D?
I don't know. I pretty much ignore them at this point. It's not something that I really follow very closely. One, know how much trust I have in our healthcare system.
Yeah.
Until they can completely restructure it, I think it's mostly a load of hogwash, personally.
Yeah.
So, Mom, I would be curious as to what you think the answer to your question is. As somebody who has spent the last 30 plus years in healthcare administration, what have you noticed? What has changed? What has become more or less efficient in general? What do you think that it's all working towards?
Well, I think it's all working towards chaos. I think it has
Mm.
become significantly less efficient, and I say that from the perspective of doctors and hospitals and home care. And it's one of the things that I think we have put in. I've been in the healthcare industry. We we look at that and we put in governmental audits and we pay this party or this third party to audit, but we haven't really managed to change anything. I mean, that's all for it's supposed to be for fraud, but we haven't really lowered the fraud risk. And so and then just from personally, I mean, getting in to see a doctor, finding a new PCP and getting in to see a doctor, you better be prepared to wait for a couple of months
Months.
for that to happen. And even when you find that PCP or that specialist, it has to be that you're in crisis before you get their attention. And so I think that's too late. So I, when I look at payments, you go to the ER and you get a bill for $20,000. And by the time it finally gets through your insurance, they pay them less than 10% of that. And that's what they're supposed to take. So that doesn't make sense to me that it's a different price for somebody who has insurance for somebody who doesn't have insurance. I mean, at this point in time, it's almost cheaper for you to not have insurance or to not use your insurance because private pay can generally be done cheaper.
Well, and I think that that's part of why addressing it on a larger, more global scale would be a decent priority to have. Maybe it's a little higher on this list, on my list, than it needs to be. But we do know that prevention is cheaper than not.
And yet, that is not what our health system is really built on is prevention.
But I think that
Not
our
at
health
all.
system is built on capitalism.
Money. See, I don't know that it's even built on capitalism. I think it may be built on a form of capitalism,
Yeah. I
crony
was thinking the same
capitalism,
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
but
thinking the exact same thing, Cole. I'm not sure it's capitalism.
our healthcare system is not about our healthcare system is not designed to prevent poor health outcomes. Our healthcare system is designed to generate profit.
Right.
Mhm.
So it does not benefit from people not getting sick. It benefits from keeping people just sick enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that if you zoom out of that sick versus not sick, outside of the direct, immediate healthcare portion of it, into the food that we eat and the chemicals that we use and the all of the other things, it's like, oh, this is cheaper. This is cheaper. Just do this. Oh, this is better because it's so much cheaper. This is going to make us so much money, which is why I kind of twitch to the capitalism portion of it, because I think that once you zoom out into that bigger, more holistic view of it, it is all stair stepped up to creating a complete dumpster fire because that's what makes money. And like Cole said, we
Well,
want to keep
it's
people just sick enough. We don't want to kill them because then there's nobody to pay for anything. But we want to keep them on the edge of paying and paying enough and paying a little bit too much because we want all of that. So maybe it's not so much capitalism as it is greed.
I think that's fair.
So, next point, Callie, was about rebuilding alliances and modern, and here's your word again. Yours was mini lateralism, Cole. This one is multilateralism, diplomacy plus defense. So that problems like climate, nuclear risk, cybercrime, supply chains require coalitions. I do think cyber was in both of your list.
Yeah, because it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue every single day.
Yeah,
Every single day.
Not
yeah,
only do you have more people that are becoming acclimated and being able to abuse the power that technology gives them, you've also got technology itself becoming, I don't want to say more and more sentient, but more and more capable and
Scary.
more capable by itself to do things. And I genuinely don't think that like our frontline huge corporate technology research and development are doing it there. I don't think that they are trying to create things that they can utilize to take advantage of individuals, but I certainly think that the things that they are developing have the capability to do that. And I think that there are lots of people who are utilizing that technology as it becomes available to take advantage of people. Think about cryptocurrencies, for example. Most people just don't trust them in general because so many of them are scams. But
yeah.
the whole original intent of cryptocurrency was to develop a decentralized digital currency that is transparent and trackable and easy to use. And now people are taking that entire concept and abusing it and marketing it to people as basically a scratch off ticket and then ripping them off for it.
Well, and I think the other kind of side of that coin is that technology is becoming so much more commonplace and accessible to a much bigger audience of people. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that unless there is a lack of education and understanding on what it actually is and means. There's nothing wrong with people going in and investing in cryptocurrency and being part of that world until they do it to the point of losing their entire life savings because it was a scam, because it was something that wasn't reputable and they got. Because it's just an app on the App Store and everything's fine. We can do this. There's nothing dangerous there.
I do think that a global alliance to oversee, is that the right word? To balance that as it grows, to look at it, to be able to say, here's where the scary parts are, or here's are the things that we need to watch. I do think a global alliance on that is
A
advantageous.
digital Geneva Convention is the
Yes.
term that one of my plans used when I was looking over them last night.
Yeah.
Of course, here's the problem. The Geneva Convention doesn't have a lot of teeth. So you need one that actually can do something.
Well, how do you do that without like here's the thing. You cannot legislate or regulate the rest of the world unless you have the ability to enforce it against the rest of the world.
How does
That's
that
just
work
how
with
laws work.
oceans?
What do you
How does
mean?
that work with wars?
Who's got the bigger navy? Who's got more
Mhm.
guns?
Who's willing to fight? And I guess that's the thing. I think we could still I'm still looking for a global coalition on that, some type of agreement so that and maybe it's just as simple as a Geneva Convention style. Maybe I'm wrong about the teeth, but I feel like if you can't have a global agreement on where this is going, all that does is say, "Oh, well, the US won't let you do that, but you can go over to India and do whatever you wanna do." And you can do that internationally, so it still affects the US even though the US is against it. So there has
Yeah,
to be s
unfortunately, it's kind of the same as nuclear weapons, where you need mutually assured destruction effectively in
yes,
order to create an environment, because you either have to say, I am both able and willing to enforce these rules, and I have enough agreement from the rest of the world that you can participate, or you're going to be against all of us, which kind of goes back to that first pillar from earlier, where one of the risks is counter alliances, or you get to a state where, okay, look, we all know the capability of this technology and we're making agreement that we're not going to use it against each other. And now, I think that's, again, pretty difficult to enforce, particularly with the anonymity that technology has a tendency to provide. And so I think it's a really difficult thing to develop
I
as a whole, to have that Geneva Convention, that digital Geneva Convention, if you will. Because, like you said, it doesn't really have a lot of teeth.
but if you do nothing, if you have 0 coalition,
Then
y
you're in 2025.
I mean,
I think that it would have to be addressed more like, and hang with me for just a second. I think it would have to be addressed more like a family situation. So I can call my brother a dork all day long, but nobody else can. You cannot do that. But I think that we would have to be closer with all of those other places in order to form that collaboration, because I think that it takes everybody, and maybe it's not everybody, but a sizable chunk, right? Because right now, somebody could call my brother a dork, and there are people that could do that that I can't do anything about.
yeah.
But there are also people
Do
that
it.
I could. Yeah, do it. I wanna watch. But I think that you would have to look at it from a different perspective that we don't tend to take on.
Yeah. I think a more realistic approach personally would be development, further development, investment in cybersecurity. And I don't think the digital Geneva Convention is necessarily a bad idea. I think that you have to go into that understanding that it's something that's like, hey, these are the agreements that we're making. And if you decide to use these technologies against us, the rest of us are going to use them against you. And so it's kind of a combination of both strategies or both theories here is, okay,
Mm.
the US and Europe and South America and India and Oceania, we're all on the same page. We're at least going to up front say we're not using these technologies against each other. And if we catch anybody using them, it's the rest of us against you. So it
It's a
kind of leads into
cybernature.
that same sort of, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a cyber version of mutually assured destruction where you
Mm.
say, look, and you have to develop that cybersecurity in order to be able to enforce something like that.
To police it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're developing multinational cyber defense task forces, if you will, then I think that at least incentivizes, it's the word I'm looking for here,
Compliance?
Cooperation?
cooperation. Thank you. I knew it started with a C.
So did yours, Cole, go more into that technology? Yours says yours was a little bit more geared that way.
I don't think it goes into as much detail. I think it's mine is a much more broad strokes plan. So that's pillar number 3 in mine is lead the future of technology and norms. Shape global governance of AI, bio, and cyber, with the plan being to lead a digital Geneva Convention, norms against AI deepfakes in elections, cyber attacks on hospitals and autonomous kill systems, and establish global certification for safe AI or bio labs, with the pros being reduces catastrophic misuse of tech, while the risk is enforcement is hard, like we talked about. It also talks about domestic tech leadership, and pretty much all of the plans that I saw are expanding the CHIPS Act in some form or another. This one specifically expanded the CHIPS Act into an Advanced Manufacturing Act covering robotics, quantum, and biotech, with national test beds for secure AI, quantum communication, and clean energy.
So I think there's some agreement there, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I would say that. So I think that the kind of order of operations, if you will, is fascinating between the two. So I have something similar in seven, like priority number 7 and 8 for me. The arms control, nuclear risk reduction, and cyber norms. Catastrophic weapons and cyber disruptions can destabilize the world really quickly, a la Leave the World Behind, just in case anybody hasn't watched it, but go find it on Netflix. Renew arms control dialogues, new START style follow ups, tactical weapons limits, norms for AI in weapons, establishing cyber norms and instant response compact among democratic states to deter escalation and create quick attribution slash response mechanisms, and then technology governance, whether that's AI, biotech, and data. New tech companies multiplied both opportunity and risk. So, creating a US EU style regulatory coordination on AI safety, export controls that targets capabilities rather than entire sectors, and a global standard setting body for high risk biotech. So I do think in some capacities, the EU is starting to do this. I think that they started to do this. I think they're ahead of us on this game for kind of putting some kind of regulations in place. I think that you could look at it in a couple of different perspectives and say, oh, they're going way too far. They're not going far enough. But I do think that they're attempting to try and address that already. And I think that we could learn a thing or two. And I'm not saying necessarily to copy their plan exactly, but to leverage the good and bad of it to make a plan of our own that would still be in correlation.
See, I kind of feel like we've got our heads in the sand on this,
Oh, I agree.
and we're not addressing any of those risks.
Okay, I'm going to say this. I think the vast majority of people don't understand the magnitude of those risks, including the elected officials that are representing us.
100% with you.
Which I think is why it's really easy to look at the EU and say, oh, they're way overstep. You have no idea what the steps even are. How would you know
Yeah,
where overstepping starts and stops?
yeah. But Cole, I also think that we have expertise available and that we aren't utilizing, that we're
Sure.
not. So our capabilities
Welcome to
are there, and
2025.
Yeah.
yeah, our capabilities are there, and we're just like, "That's hard. Maybe it's not gonna be that bad."
And I think that that's
Hopefully, it's not going to be that bad.
foolish.
I think it's foolish, so
I agree.
okay. Then, Callie, yours, we're gonna go back up because you went down a couple of steps,
I did.
match calls cyber, and so then yours starts with smart economic policy, resilient and fair globalization, because insecurity fuels populism and instability. So I get that, and I
I think this is
agree.
probably where ours are the closest.
Do you?
Interesting.
Okay. What is yours? Where is yours, and what does it address?
So mine, that's pillar number 2 of 4, strengthen global and domestic economic stability, build a resilient supply chain network, friendshore key industries, chip manufacturing, batteries, and rare earth minerals with Mexico, Canada, Taiwan, and India, create a federal supply chain monitoring office that uses real-time data to predict bottlenecks, which would reduce vulnerability to shocks, but it could have higher short-term production costs. It also says to pursue a balanced trade strategy, renew first century trade agreements, digital trade, AI rules, IP standards, and provide incentives for African growth and tech partnerships, creating new markets, with the benefits being to open export markets, counter authoritarian economic influence, but it would risk political sensitivity about globalization.
So I do think the current administration is working in that direction.
When it's talking about friendshoring key industries, so being in Houston, I'm very familiar with onshoring and offshoring. Friendshoring is doing where your friends are.
Yeah, I guess. Honestly, it's not a term that I've heard before, but it seems like, okay, and this is going to a different plan that it generated for me last night. But this is essentially okay, if you focus really hard economically on the United States first, and then you start to export that prosperity, you can now start to export some of that manufacturing to bring these other nations up to a similar level, kind of on a globalist scale. So, this friend shoring thing seems to be a little bit of a step away from that, or at least a step in a different direction that says, hey, some of these key industries, it's okay for us to have manufacturing. We don't need to hog all of the manufacturing. Our allies can help us with this.
So I just clicked for the definition and it brings up a New York Times article about what is friend sharing. And the quick definition is a term, a cousin of reshoring or onshoring, and a sibling to nearshoring, shorthand for the practice of relocating supply chains to countries where the risk of disruption from political chaos is low. Stain.
Are we doing the opposite of that right now?
We're
I see it similarly. I don't think you can. Okay, this is going to be a bit of a tangent.
Oh gosh, we never do that.
I think we are extremely close in the grand scheme of things to automating the vast majority of our workforce, of our labor force. So
Okay.
as an economy, as an economic system, our nation, probably within our lifetimes, is my bet, the vast majority of manufacturing is going to be almost entirely automated, meaning we should be focusing right now on developing those manufacturing bases to develop our own internal prosperity, which can then be exported to the rest of the world to say, hey, look at all these cool factories that we've built. Because again, this is reaching out to a different one of the plans that was generated for me, but is very closely related to a conversation that I was having with Nathan earlier this week. Everything that we're running into on a global scale right now, for the most part, is based on scarcity, energy scarcity, material scarcity, manufacturing scarcity. That's where all the vast majority of a conflict is stemming from. So if we as a nation have the ability to massively reduce, almost effectively eliminate that scarcity internally, we can now offer that same lack of scarcity to the rest of the world to say, hey, look at all these cool factories that we built. Nobody has to work anymore. Nobody has to want for anything. Do you want this?
But if you automate, because this is the scare that everybody has. If you automate, how do people earn a living?
Well, if you
well,
eliminate scarcity, they don't have to. That's the thing. The problem is that in between phase where we're at right now, where it is we have eliminated the labor force before we have eliminated scarcity. That's the scary part.
and I think the other kind of scary part of it is the injection of capital that is required in order to make that change, right? So people in the grand scheme of things are cheap. People to buy their labor is much cheaper than to buy this machine to do it. And the reason that I say that, hold on, the reason that I'd say that is because it takes a lot of capital up front in order to buy the machine, whereas it just takes a little bit at a time over a much longer period of time to buy the people. And so when you weigh that over the short term, people are much cheaper. When you weigh that over the long term, people are much more expensive.
It's
And
like
so
a mortgage.
yes, it is like a mortgage.
And who are the people who are developing these automated systems?
The
The people
people
that
who
have the most
benefit from them.
concentrated wealth on the face of the planet.
Yep. It's why they're building data centers. That's why they're building energy solutions to go out and give back, to resell all of those things to somebody because they know that it will be a requirement.
But here's the thing. If you eliminate scarcity, what does a concentration of wealth matter?
Elimination of scarcity kind of makes me twitch because it does not compute. I don't understand how that happens because what does a perfect world look like when scarcity has been eliminated? What does that mean?
Supply and demand are gone because there is infinite supply.
So
You have
there's
just
just
have
bananas
access to
everywhere
whatever
all
you
the time.
I mean, effectively, yes. That's the end result. If you
And
eliminate scarcity, nothing is scarce anymore.
how do
But
I get that banana?
right, you just go grab it.
I mean, it's at a Whole Foods or Walmart and it just doesn't cost anything.
And so who pays for the electricity to keep the lights on at the Walmart?
We have infinite electricity. There is no scarcity.
See, this is like, I'm not disagreeing with you.
This is
It
woo-woo
does
to
not
me.
compute.
Yeah. Woo,
I
woo, woo,
cannot.
woo.
I'm not saying that this is a realistic end result, but this is the end result that I see these people working towards. Regardless of whether it's doable or not, this is what they think they are doing.
I appreciate you saying that and clarifying that because I don't think that's ever been in my brain.
Mhm.
Because you've never existed in an environment without scarcity. It's almost impossible. How difficult is it for us to conceptualize infinity?
But even with that, Cole, in the back of my mind, I am hearing you say, and what happens to innovation? If there is zero scarcity, what happens to innovation? Where does it
Well, if you
go?
don't have scarcity, what do you need innovation for? What is there to innovate?
I mean,
Isn't that just Wally? Everybody's fat and happy and gross.
Kinda, yeah. But they don't want for anything.
Yeah. I I think I said this on a podcast the other day. I need to go back and watch that movie.
I think I was just thinking the very same thing. I didn't like it the first time because I thought it was too accurate, but I'd like to see it now, 10 years later to see.
It came out in 2008. We're almost 20 years later. And
I knew one of you was gonna get
exponentially
me on my
math.
math there.
I mean, but we're just we're leaping closer to it every single day.
But it wasn't a positive movie.
No,
Well,
it
don't
wasn't. I'm not saying that it
don't know
was.
that's where we
But
wanna go.
it's only one possible outcome. Mom, what if you didn't have to go to work every day? What if you could spend every day writing?
Would you? Would you write all day long every day? No. You would sit here and you would play your Wordle and I would watch
No,
TV and we're going to watch a movie and we're going to read some over here and I'm going to take a
no,
nap and
and here's the other side of that. Then you just have an abundance of writing.
that does nothing for no purpose.
Who's gonna
What do you mean
read?
for no purpose?
I mean,
No,
how do
no one's
you
Well,
reading
if
it
you're going to sit here and watch Netflix, why would you not read mom's writing?
because
You'll watch someone else's writing, but not hers?
I guess that's fair.
I mean,
What
but
if she
there's
starts
just gonna
writing
be
for Netflix?
there's just gonna be too much there'll be too many people with the capability to write all day. I mean, And
But
here's the
why
deal,
is that
I
a
can
bad
write
thing?
all day, but that doesn't mean that it's good writing every day.
It doesn't matter.
It
Why does it have to
does
be good
matter.
writing? Because you now get to focus on it. You get to hone that as a craft, and eventually maybe it will be really good writing. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter if it's good writing or not anymore. You don't have to go to work, and you don't have to pay for food, and you don't have to pay for energy.
Maybe that's just so far-fetched that my brain will not.
Does not compute.
Yeah, doesn't compute, boo.
I get it. But again, that is the reality that many of these people appear to be working towards. That's
I
why Elon
know it's
Musk
what
is
they're
talking about
working.
universal high income. That's
I
why
know it.
people like Andrew Chang have been talking about universal basic income for years now, because they have foreseen this technology that we're building. Pretty soon, manufacturing plants aren't going to have a bunch of people running around in them doing stuff. They're going to have a bunch of robots. A lot of them already do,
Yeah.
but those robots that are in manufacturing plants right now need to be maintained. Well, what if you no longer have to pay a person to maintenance them? You've now got a Tesla bot who can go in and do it better, faster, and cheaper than a person can.
I am not convinced that that is 100% of the situation.
The plan, the goal, the desire.
What do you
I
think it
just
is?
I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I would be fearful of a world that did not need human intervention.
And I think that that is why I go back to kind of one of the things on this list of what we need to do is prepare smart economic policy for resilient, fair globalization, domestic industrial policy to invest in worker retraining, not robot trainings, regional development grants for communities hurt by trade and tech disruption. I think rewriting trade deals to include labor, environmental, and anti monopoly standards with stronger enforcement mechanisms, taxing capital gains for long term investment incentives, and close offshore profit shifts to raise revenue for public goods. Like, we are trying to work towards people rather than away. I think we need to.
You wanna tax them and Cole wants to give them everything.
Yep. I
This is
don't think
not
that's,
about what
yeah,
I want.
it's not Cole's plan.
You don't get to put that on me. That's not fair.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. It it was misspoken. The plan that Cole is addressing wants to give people everything. The plan that Callie's AI has given her is to tax people, but
There's
to
more
educate them
to it than
better.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think here's the difference. I think Callie's is a much more near term in scope, whereas I
Yeah.
think mine, being broad strokes, is in the middle, and the one that I'm talking about is coming much faster than anyone can recognize.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Mhm.
How does yours address education?
It doesn't really address it here.
Mm,
So
I mean,
I
it says reduce internal fragility, infrastructure, education, political polarization.
so the last kind of tip or the last plan priority on mine, number 10, is soft power, culture, education, and science diplomacy. Influence is more than military and economic, it's about values and networks. So we're expanding Fulbright, exchange programs, scholarship funds, and international STEM collaborations. We're increasing funding for global public diplomacy because we're trying to incentivize people to go and learn, to go and be better, to go and do more because those things are important. And we if we don't prioritize them, they will not get prioritized, as silly as that sounds, right?
yeah. So, Cole, what is on the plan that you got that isn't that we haven't already addressed in Callie's 10 steps?
I mean, I think for the most part, we've touched on everything.
One of the ones that I think that we touched on very early on Cole's plan that my plan didn't address is migration and immigration. So that is number 9 on mine, talking about those policies being humane, pragmatic, and cooperative, both for climate, conflict, and economic instability will increase those movements, and unmanaged flows produce crises. I think that we're seeing that actively in the last several years. And so the regional compacts to expand legal mobility pathways, coordinated border management support, and development of investments targeted to migration root causes. Again, we're going back to treating the why rather than the symptom. But fast tracking refugee capacity grants for neighboring countries to stabilize populations in various regions. And we're looking at all of those asylum processing times, number of legal migration pathways, the remittance volumes, because I think that if we don't start addressing immigration and migration, we're going to, Lord, I hope we don't stay where we are now.
Well, and I'm going to say this. Think that's one of the issues that I have with the current administration, that instead of looking at this with a level of intelligence or uh,
Humanity.
humanity too, I mean, it seems almost a head in the sand kind of thing of any immigration is bad immigration, and that's not accurate. We need that immigration. Oh, Coles
I think that's a
disagreeing.
misrepresentation of the administration. I don't think the administration thinks immigration is bad.
They're
In
all
fact,
rapists.
okay, never mind.
No, no, don't. Finish, Cole,
Nope, I'm good.
because I'd like to okay, my take on this, my understanding of this is that you cannot go and say, "This group of people, because they came from here, are all bad." You have to look at the individual to see what the contributions are, what they've you know, why they're here, what they've presented, and I don't see us doing that, and I think we need to be doing that. I think there are a lot of things that America has gained from immigration and currently has that you can't just do a bucket toss of this and feel like you're doing it wisely.
Well, and I think that I guess I'm really confused. If you think that that's a misrepresentation, I would be really curious as to what you think the intention actually is, because we've seen over and over again, and I did I pull one single line that has been repeated on several times on several stages by the like highest person in our land? Yeah, I did. But I'm also looking at the way that it's all being handled. Well, you're brown, so we have to get rid of you. And we're going to do that with masks over our faces, and we're not going to take anything else into consideration. Going back to our DEI episode where we were talking about blind hiring being so productive and so valuable, we're choosing to do the opposite. We're watching it happen in front of us. And I think that that is incredibly detrimental to our society and the positive trajectory that we could be choosing.
So we've lost him on this, so we will step away. But okay, where do we go next? I mean, Callie, yours has an implementation framework.
Yes. How to get things done politically, creating a national resilience and global engagement plan that would be led by the White House and interagencies with an annual public scorecard, using carrots more than sticks at first, funding, procurement, market access, but keeping credible sticks, tariffs, and sanctions in our back pocket for enforcement, bipartisan coalition building, anchoring major elements such as election infrastructure, pandemic prep, disaster resilience, worker retraining in various constituencies across all these states, private sector and philanthropic leverage, matching public dollars with philanthropy and private investment for scale, and then short, medium, and long-term milestones, both 16 to 18 months out, passing key domestic reforms, scaling up surveillance. 3 to 6 years would be big climate and aid targets, and 10 plus years would be structural shifts in emissions and global health systems.
So the first thing that I think of there is if you're talking about funding and procurement, where does that come from? Where does the money come from?
Yeah,
And this doesn't really address that other than really kind of mentioning tariffs.
So where like the next kind of step is the trade-offs and the realistic constraints, and that's the top one, both the budget and politics. Many of these steps would require funding and bipartisan buy-in, where Congress balks using executive authority and multilateral finance creatively while pressing for legislation. Sovereignty concerns, multilateral measures must respect partner sovereignty and use incentives and regional partnerships. And
Uh,
so I think that that's a really roundabout way of saying, "I don't know.
Diplomacy.
Yeah, figure it out."
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah. So here's where I think you, particularly Callie, differ from the current administration and why there is so much abrasiveness there. You only see the stick because they prioritize the stick.
mm, are there carrots?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. There are carrots. They are, again, not prioritized. And depending on your sources for information, many of them are not talked about because oftentimes they're relatively vague or not well understood, myself included.
Can you give
And I
me an
think you're
example?
no,
Okay.
it's something that I would have to go and do a bunch of I would have to look into it to try and give you a valid example. And don't really just want to pull something out of my rear end for this. The budget and politics line there is exactly what I see this administration utilizing.
Mhm,
So they require funding and bipartisan buy-in, which we don't have, where Congress balks, use executive authority,
mhm,
which is exactly what the current administration is doing. Multilateral finance creatively while pressing for legislation. Because they are pressing for legislation and they're having a difficult time getting it through. Not saying that that legislation is good or bad, it is just what they are attempting to do. And so, again, I think your compassion makes their execution really off putting.
I was thinking of the word brusque, where you used execution, and that kind of makes sense to me. So I think it's a fascinating idea. And I think I'm also a little flabbergasted that the same source came up with such a variance. So this is, I mean, it's not an easy fix for sure. I was just reading, I got a book that a guy who's worked for the Social Security Administration, he's developed 10 what he calls cheat sheets. And so he's I mean, he's writing and about, oh, this is what all of these terms mean, and this is how you do X, and this is how you do Y. But one of his cheat sheets is about how do you fix Social Security. And by the time I was through with it, I felt like my eyes were just going back and forth because, this one has a 35% chance of working and this one has a 16% chance of working, but none of them were really good and none of them were really fast. And I think this is the same thing. And I think here is the difference. For me, I have enough hope in humanity that I think there is there will be some ideas out there that will help facilitate some of this. I'm not in the burn it down and I'm not in the hopelessness because I think where maybe the general population, myself included, isn't educated enough. I think there are people out there who have ideas that can help us. And Cole, it's one of the things that I say to you pretty regularly is, I think you have the capability of being a part of that movement to create something that will quote unquote save us. I don't see annihilation, but I think it may get worse before it gets better, which is often the case in life.
And I don't think that there's any form of instant gratification in any of this. And I think we've become so accustomed to that being the expectation that we're disappointed when it's not immediately perfect and better.
I don't disagree with you on that. So would you do this again? Would you ask AI the same question again? I have to say, Cole, I was really surprised when you said you'd really never used ChatGPT. Do you use another AI format?
I mean, not in this context, no.
Interesting.
I mean, Google to search something to summarize search results.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, who's got my weird thought?
I've got a weird thought for you today. So I guess this was last week or the week before at Art Basel in Miami. There was a Boston Robotics display that I thought was quite interesting. If you haven't seen them, they've got some quadrupedal robot dogs that they have been developing for quite some time. And their display this year had those robot dogs, but they had very lifelike silicone heads of many of the tech magnates like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Sam Altman. And it was a really, really weird.
What's weird?
It was a really weird scene. There's a couple of very interesting videos of these kind of skin tone quadrupedal robot dogs walking around with Elon heads. It was weird.
Or Andy Warhol.
Pooping
Zuckerberg, yeah.
pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Don't forget that part. Pooping pictures of what they are seeing.
Yeah,
The title
it
of the
was
installation was Regular Animals.
They were weird. It was a whole weird. Do we know where the idea came from?
An
the
artist.
artist known as Beeple.
It was strange.
Oh, yes.
Andy Warhol fits in there.
Oh, yes.
If you need a weird fix, go check out Regular Animals at Art Basel.
It
They're
was strange.
so strange.
So strange. They had them in a fenced in area with people around them and I mean, their movements, the head movements and the eye movements. And then they're on these robot dogs and
It
it was
feels
quite.
very like BattleBots Arena to me,
Yes, it
like
did. It
waiting for
did.
them to start attacking each other.
Okay.
And if you've got some serious change, you can go buy them for about 100 grand a piece.
I'll put that on my Christmas list.
Weird.
Okay. Well, of all of these kinds of things, I have a good story for you.
Let's hear it.
So, from Whitehall, Pennsylvania, where one dad decided not to wait for someone else to help. AJ Owen saw food prices climbing and families struggling, so he set out 2 coolers and a tote in his front yard with a simple sign: take what you need, give what you can. And at first, it was just him and his 2 sons, and they were stocking the pantry items for people, but it caught on fast. And then neighbors started dropping off canned goods and diapers, and strangers picked up what they needed. And before long, it went viral. And then came the surprise: an anonymous envelope in his mailbox stuffed with cash, thousands of dollars, and a note blessing the pantry. That act helped him to grow it into a daily resource for the community. And so I think that story is just that here's a dad and his 2 little boys, and he's trying to teach them something about being compassionate and being a member of the human race and the community, and that real change sometimes can be something really small: a lawn, a cooler, and a willingness to care for the people around you. So, way to go, AJ Owens.
Yeah, I love that.
I like that story. We can all do small things.
Accepting help, sharing help, helping when you can.
Yeah. Helping when you can. Love you guys.
Love y'all.
Love you too.